It's spooky season, so I decided to bring the dead back to life with the zombie deck in Goat format. Let's see if it can survive the living. I'm going to show off this very fun list, but also stay to the very end because I'm going to show a game on how this deck can play out. Let's get right into it. Starting out with the zombie package is 3 copies of Pyramid Turtle. So this is your recruiter that will get zombies that have 2,000 or less defense, and we have some really good options. Typically what I like to do is also normal summon this in face up, because if you put this in face down, you're susceptible to Nobleman Crossout, so you have to be on the lookout for that. And with zombies, we have a powerful monster that we can social summon in Ryu Kokki. Ryu Kokki has that 2,000 defense requirement that we can special summon, but it has 2,400 attack. That actually runs over big monsters such as like Chaos Sorcerer, crashes into the Monarchs if need to be, gets over Gravekeeper's Spy, and also Blade Knight. Sometimes what I like to do is use Pyramid Turtle to crash into an opponent's attack position monster and force the Ryu Kokki out of deck that way too. And now you have a strong beater. I've messed with 2 copies too, but I feel like the way that the build ended up being in terms of Zombie Turbo, I feel like the 3rd copy is appreciated. And there are other cards you can use such as like Brain Control, Snatch Steal to tribute summon for the Ryu Kokki if you do draw into it as well. It's also a phenomenal target for Book of Life too. Another really good target for monsters is Spirit Reaper. So it cannot die by battle. It's the zombie that won't die. But when it does battle damage, you get to discard 1 random card from your opponent's hand. And that's really big in Goat format because a lot of the cards we tend to use are from hand. There's not much graveyard special summoning in most decks, and also once it's in the graveyard, typically it's kind of gone. So Spirit Reaper really shines in this deck. You could also have an onslaught of monsters attacking your Pyramid Turtle, and then Spirit Reaper can also be a wall that they cannot get over because of the effect. The last of the zombie cards is 2 copies of Regenerated Mummy. So this card is 1 a zombie, it's as dark as well. This will be relevant in a minute. But also 1800 attack is respectable in Goat format too. This gets over cards like Dawn's Lug and other flip effect weaker monsters such as Magician of Faith and things like that too. So it's a kind of like a normal summonable beater essentially. It also deals well with Delinquent Duel. So if your opponent hits it or you choose to hit it, this will come back and make Delinquent Duel less effective for your opponent. Helps more zombie monsters that you could just normal summon to and then discard if need to be. And there are more targets for the Book of Life. There are other zombies that are very nostalgic you could try out for yourself. I actually tried Vampire Lord and the Spirit from the Dark as well. Vampire Lord is also level 5, so you do have to tribute summon it essentially, or you can try to dump it into the graveyard for a Book of Life revival. And it can keep reoccurring every turn for yourself in that sense. And when you do battle damage, you choose one of the types, whether it be monster, spell, or trap, and your opponent has to send from a card from their deck to the graveyard at that point. What I found myself though is that if I picked monster, most decks play Sinister Serpent or other effect monsters that they want into the graveyard that they can revive with Premature Burial or things like that. And then if you use spells, if they play Magician of Faith, they can send like a Pot of Greed or Graceful Charity, and then the Magician of Faith will grab it back for them, and all of a sudden you just kind of help their strategy, especially if you did a early. And so I felt like traps is probably your best bet. If you do play Vampire Lord, that's up to you. Try it out. The other card is Despair from the Dark. It's just a bigger beater. The only problem is that you can't special summon it with Pyramid Turtle, so you have to get it out of your hand into the graveyard for Book of Life, or you have to tribute summon it with 2 monsters. It also kind of deals with Delinquent Duel a little bit too, but I felt like if you're already playing Ryu Kokki already, I feel like that's just enough. So that's the zombie monster. So what's the turbo part of this deck? So as I was playing zombies in different builds, such as like zombie control, different ratios of zombies in general, I had a player that actually brought up this point where why not have BLS in the mix? You find out that the card pool for zombies in Goat format doesn't have many lights, and there is some technically, but they're like, they have specific requirements for special summoning them in the first place, so you're not going to get them on the field. So I took an inspiration from Chaos Turbo. Part of it is like, let's make BLS life. It's a very powerful card, and the lights for this deck is actually 3 copies of Thunder Dragon. And what I also realized is that some of the deck builds use cards like Tribute to the Doom or other discard traps if you want to play them. And so having some fodder to discard, even for Graceful Charity, Thunder Dragon really shines at that point. And it's also a guaranteed way to force a light into the graveyard as soon as possible. So as soon as you see 1 Thunder Dragon, you discard it, boom, already in the graveyard. And you get your 2 copies of Thunder Dragon in the process. So I felt like that's nice. And again, it does pair nicely with cards like Brain Control, Snatch Steal, where you need to get rid of a monster by tribute summoning. This is something you could tribute summon with as well. Also, with other Chaos Turbo matchups too, you can have cards such as like Gravekeeper Spy. I think this is a good call to have at least 2 copies. So you can also kind of get away with pretending to be Chaos Turbo yourself. And if you have this face down, they can use their Noble Mana Crossout on it. And it actually hurts them more than it hurts you. Gravekeeper Spy, I see it as a bonus with this deck. It's a 2000 defense body. It's also a dark. It gets another spy out. So you have some swarming aspect to it, so that's super helpful. So if you do get it, then you have board building, and if they knock it, then at that point your zombies, like if you set a Pyramid Turtle or a Spirit Reaper, depending on the game state, you don't have to worry as much about seeing another Noble Mana Cross at that point. With the rest of the monsters, Sangan will search your Pyramid Turtles, your Gravekeeper Spy, so a pretty good card. It also searches for another card that I'm saving for the last of the lineup. You can also search for Sinister Serpent. You have a discard target. This is great for Tribe Infecting Virus, for Tribute to the Doom, etc. We have a Breaker Magical Warrior because we want to get rid of back row. It's a 1600 attacker, 1900 if you still have the counter on it. And it's also a dark as well. And as I mentioned, Tribe Infecting Virus is there to help get rid of threats, especially if you can't get over them, but it helps discard zombies into the graveyard so you can use Book of Life pretty easily, or even Premature Burial. And the last monster is the spice that I added was Cyberstein. So Cyberstein, basically you pay 5,000 life points to special summon 1 fusion monster from your fusion deck. And so you can get Thousand Eyes Restrict, you can get Gatling Dragon, you can also get the Koala that's a big beater and try to do like an OTK push. This just had a little bit of oomph, a little bit of spice to this build where they think it's a typical zombie build, and if they start seeing cards like the turbo build, then they're like, okay, maybe there's a BLS, and then all of a sudden you drop a Cyberstein, they can catch them off guard, especially if you need to get rid of a board with Gatling Dragon. So that's something that you can get and do the finishing blows that way too. So this card's nice. Typically for games 2 and 3, this is a card that I might side out because life points can be important, especially in those matchups of time. But sometimes like you have to focus on things that are going to hurt your deck because your opponent is siding against it, right? And also it's worth noting that Saga can search for this.
Final Saga has other products that I put their link in the description below if you want to check them out. And feel free to use the code commanderjaime for an additional discount and any ongoing sales combined as well.
For the spells, this is Trinity, Pot of Greed, Graceful Charity, the Lincoln Duel. Very good cards. We also play the 1 Heavy Storm and a copy of Mystical Space-Time Food for back row removal, of course. 2 copies of Noble Mana Crossout. There's plenty of face downs that we can easily get rid of, so we make more room for our zombies. Now this is where we start mummifying our opponents. It's with a card such as Tribute to the Doom. Essentially, you can discard a card and destroy an opponent's monster. This helps getting rid of threats such as like Chaos Sorcerer, BLS, the Monarch. This also targets face downs if you want to, especially if you're trying not to proc a Dekochi, a Magician of Faith, or a Gravekeeper Spy still. This helps it be safe. And then we have plenty of discard fodder, such as like Thunder Dragons, Sinister Serpent, your zombies. This is a way to make sure your Book of Life is live. And speaking of Book of Life, we play 1 copy of Book of Life. So other zombie builds typically play to 2 to 3 copies, depending on how much commitment they want into this. But as you saw with the zombie package, we only have so much with it. And at the same time, I noticed that with the small package that I have, Pyramid Turtle is the most reliable to get Ryu Kokki out pretty easily. And it doesn't matter if there's one in the grave, if there's one in the deck already, we could just get another one out. And then also we can still have other cards to go with our strategy. We have BLS, we have Cyberstein, and so on too. So it's not super impactful to continually reviving our zombies. The other thing about Book of Life is that you cannot activate it if your opponent doesn't have a monster in the graveyard. And so if you see this early on, it can be kind of a dead card. So it's kind of annoying, but you can get rid of cards on your opponent's graveyard too that are key, especially for light and dark targets for any chaos monsters. But we do play 1 Premature Burial, and so this can revive anything technically. It's the spirit of Book of Life, and so overall it's just a useful card, and it doesn't require any monsters on the opponent's side of the graveyard, basically, either. We also take advantage of Snatch Steal too, so we want to take advantage of cards that we can get rid of, especially if they're annoying power cards. And in addition, we have 2 copies of Brain Control. This is what also makes triple Ryu Kokki very good, and then if you decide to play any of the Monarchs on the side deck, Brain Control just helps with those fodders, and also you can attack with them too if need to be to deal more life points depending on the monster they have. You can use their effects too, such as like the chaos monsters too. So Brain Control overall is such a great card, and it has that spirit where it's like trying to control your brain. Definitely Halloween vibes in that aspect, but really cool. And onto the traps, we are playing a small set of traps too. First is the Ring of Destruction. This is good to get rid of monsters, deal life points too. You can do this during your opponent's turn, your turn, and end games that way too. So very helpful card too, especially if you're able to deal enough damage, and then that's like the finishing blow essentially. You could just activate it and destroy your own Ryu Kokki and force life points that way. Then we have Mirror Force. So if your opponent tries to swarm you and crash into you, you can use Mirror Force and boom, it does wonders at that point. And then the last cards that we play is Triple Royal Decree. So as you may have noticed, we play plenty of monsters, plenty of spells, so there's only so much room with the traps. And I was like thinking like, okay, Ring of Destruction and Mirror Force are really good cards just to have in general, right? So then it's like, do I make room for Trap Dust Shoot? Do I make room for Solemn Judgment? Do I make room for Parental Tribute and things like that? And I felt like, honestly, if my zombies can get through, especially if a Pyramid Turtle can crash into a monster to force a Ryu Kokki, then I'd rather not deal with Mirror Force or Sakotsa Armor that my opponent might have, especially against like a warrior deck that has a lot of traps too. Why not just play Triple Royal Decree and just eliminate that prompt, right? And that's really the mindset. What's also really nice is that when you side, you already have this, especially against decks that use trap cards against you. So at that point, then you really don't have to side these out in some matchups. And so then at this point, you can just side other cards in the monster and the spell lineup, essentially. So overall, I'm liking this particular build with Royal Decree. So it lets you do what you want and push when you need to as well. So I'm going to show off a game right here. And we actually started out pretty well. We have Thunder Dragon, Pyramid Turtle, already Gravekeeper Spy. And so we're immediately going to use Thunder Dragon to search for the other copies. And at this point, I also want to use this information to let my opponent know that perhaps I'm playing a Chaos Turbo deck, especially if I set a face down. So they can only make that assumption. And they're using Graceful Charity. Very nice. And they set 2 cards, essentially. Here I'm thinking what I could do next. I can try to force if that's a Torrential Tribute or provoke them to do something. So I'm going to flip summon the Gravekeeper Spy and see if it goes through. So it does. And I get my extra copy. And in this case, I set the Pyramid Turtle. So the reason that I do this is because I'm not afraid of a Nobleman and Crossout, because they would have done it already at this point too, in most cases. So they got the Tribe Infecting Virus, so they're going to get rid of both spies, which is actually pretty good value for them. Then they're going to get their own spies. So at this point, they're thinking they're playing against a Chaos Turbo Mare, essentially. Get the second spy out. And so they're going to try to crash into it and force whatever I have face down in their eyes. But in reality, it's a Pyramid Turtle and it's going to trigger. So in this case, I get the Ryu Kokki out, but this is still the battle phase. They actually activate a Ring of Destruction, which causes us to lose 2,400 life points both ways, but they can still attack me with the remaining spies. So I take a good amount of damage. And at this point, I'm at 3,200 life points. Now for they set 1 and end their turn, essentially. I draw into Brain Control. So I got a couple options that I can do here. So I'm going to take their Tribe Infecting Virus and see if I can get value from it. I can easily discard Thunder Dragons, but they're actually going to activate Raigeki Break and discard a Duel, which is good because that means they just wasted 2 more cards. And the back row was an unknown for me, but now I know that it's clear at this point. So I'm going to use Premature Burial, bringing me down to 1,600 life points left. But now I got Ryu Kokki. And so here I'll go into the battle phase and start attacking their spies. I also considered calling Regenerating Mummy, but I totally forgot about that. I was so focused if the Tribe Infecting Virus would go through and then also getting the Ryu Kokki out. I said Spirit Reaper. Again, I'm not afraid of Nobleman right now since we haven't seen it at all. And they're banishing their light and their dark, so that means something coming out. And it's a Chaos Sorcery, so pretty good. They're activating it and they're banishing a Ryu Kokki. And now they're attacking with their spy, but then that's when they realize it's a Spirit Reaper. So luckily we don't have any back row that they have that could be a threat. So I'm here like, can I OTK? They're at 4,400 life points too. So I'm going to take their Chaos Sorcerer with Brain Control. Now I'm down to 800 life points as well. I'm very close to low life points. Use the Chaos Sorcerer to banish that. And then I'm going to Tribute Summon Ryu Kokki over it and be able to dish that amount of damage. This is kind of risky too, because if they have a monster that they can draw into, and if it's enough difference between them and Spirit Reaper, I could lose. But I was able to at least get a card out, and I hit the card destruction, and then now it's going to their turn. And they're going to use Monster Reincarnation. At this point, they could have actually won, because they got the Chaos Sorcerer, they get it out, and all they had to do is attack me. But they end up banishing the Ryu Kokki. I guess they didn't realize how much life points I was at, which is fine. But realistically, if I wanted to play it safe, I would just left Spirit Reaper in defense mode, so I wouldn't take any damage per se. But at this point, I have Tribute to the Doom, clearing their monster, which is big. Again, that zombie support. We summon that Regenerating Mummy and attack for game, essentially. And that's the breakdown for the deck. I hope you enjoyed it. It's definitely in the Halloween spirit. I was very, very excited to show this off to y'all. Zombies has a special place in my heart since the Synchro days, and also like the Zombie Madness deck when it came out too early on. I don't know, there's just this vibe of reviving monsters from the graveyard is a powerful mechanic. Goat Format around this time barely started tapping that, especially with Premature Burial, Book of Life, things like that. But as we saw now in today's metagame with modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And even Edison format, there's like so much power to gain from the graveyard itself too. You guys have a happy Halloween. You can check out these Goat Format guides as well if you're interested in more deck profiles like these. And remember, in Goat Format, nothing stays dead.